This episode of IGN Conversations is brought to you by Gran Turismo 6, available December 6th.
What's up, everybody? I'm Greg Miller, and this is TNA's Christopher Daniels. How you doing?
I'm thrilled to be a part of it all, sir. Thanks for having me here
Oh,
today.
no, it's a pleasure. You've been here all day. He just filmed Up at Noon. You can catch it December 30th on IGN. If you're watching this after the fact, just go to IGN. Watch Up at Noon. It's super simple. Go.ign.com/Up at Noon. EPS. Anyways, Christopher, you're one of these big hunky beefcake wrestlers.
I am hunky and beefcake.
You're punching, you're fighting, you're doing your finishing moves on people.
I do.
But you're also a big nerd.
I'm a huge nerd.
Big
I'm
comic
a
book
huge
nerd.
comic book geek. More comic book geek than anything else. So
That's
yes.
really interesting. That's fascinating about you. I like that.
Yeah, I think I didn't get the correlation between wrestling and comic books until late in my life, but I realized that professional wrestling is the closest you're going to get to real life superheroes and supervillains. You know,
I was just
we're
telling
all
a friend about that last night.
We're all, dressed in our costumes. We all have our superpowers, whether it's high flying or technical wrestling or brawling.
Yeah.
You know, we all have our strengths, our weaknesses, and we're telling stories in the ring. And so, and it's ongoing. 52 weeks a year, there's pro wrestling. 52 weeks a year, 12 months a year, there's comic books. So
That's fascinating.
Yeah. So I somehow, as a kid, I got into both,
Yeah.
and have just kept at it.
Now here's the bad side of all this.
Yes.
Here you have the unfortunate side effect of being a Marvel fan.
I am a Marvel guy, which I've never seen as a detriment until this second as you bring it up.
I'm a DC guy.
That seems fair. That seems fair.
Now, here at IGN, obviously, I don't know if you know this, some people in the comments, they can tend to be mean. And
Do they really?
They
You guys.
they're the
Come on, mean
Xbox
folks.
guys. They don't like the PlayStation guys. PlayStation
Understood.
guys. I'm not, we're joking around here, obviously. I love Marvel comics, too. But I do fall on the DC side of the spectrum. I was wondering why you're drawn to Marvel.
I don't know. I think it was because I got into the Marvel stuff as a kid, and I never got emotionally invested in the DC stuff. And a lot of as I grew up, as a kid you sort of gravitate towards characters.
Sure.
But as an adult, I feel like you gravitate towards the creators. Like you enjoy
good
a
call,
certain
good call.
writer or a certain artist.
Yeah.
And so I think I got into comics and started being aware of what I was reading around the time that Claremont and John Byrne were doing X-Men.
Yeah.
And that was sort of what got me into comics, not changing from being just a reader to being a collector and someone who followed it and month in and month out was buying the same stuff and following those characters. There were some things like I remember also reading New Teen Titans in that
Right.
same period of
Wolfman.
time. Yeah, exactly.
Marv
Marv
Wolfman,
Wolfman,
yeah.
George Perez. That was. It's funny that those two runs sort of came side by side
Yeah.
because they were so. I mean, they were galvanizing to the point where they actually did the crossover, the
Yeah.
X-Men Teen Titans crossover, which was outstanding.
Yeah.
But yeah, like once I grew up and time and money became a factor in terms of what I continued to read. It was easier for me to jettison the DC ties than it was the Marvel, and I just have kept with Marvel ever since.
What do you think of everything going on with, I guess now, the New 52, Marvel Now, the Ultimate Universe, all that stuff? What do you enjoy reading? What are you reading right now?
Well, definitely anything that Brian Michael Bendis is writing, I'm
yeah,
usually
yeah,
right
yeah.
on board.
Yeah.
He got me with his Avengers run, and when the Marvel Now sort of initiative came around and he was announced as doing all new X-Men and sort of becoming the main creative force behind the X-Men titles, it was easy for me to jump onto that. I'm also reading New Avengers and Avengers, the stuff that Jonathan Hickman is writing. I have a friend who sort of supplies me with a lot of stuff at Marvel. So even stuff that I wouldn't necessarily usually pick up on my own, I've got access to. So I've been reading like Nova by Zeb Wells is really good stuff.
You're reading a lot.
I'm reading just about
What's
everything
the
that I
best
can.
thing right now you're reading?
It's got to be all new X-Men. I'm a huge fan of that stuff, and I think the thing that got me was hearing the concept of having the original X-Men come into the present. Like, to me, it set the whole thing on its ear.
Yeah.
You know, you figure, first of all, it's got to be a finite story that Brian Michael Bendis is saying, because at some point, how do you not destroy everything that's come before?
The
How do you?
timeline.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And in the last couple months, especially with the Battle of the Atom crossover, they've sort of established that they're in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
And so that to me is, there's so many possibilities with these new characters that are old, and the younger versions coming into contact with themselves and the people that have dealt with the older, you know, the established versions, how they react to the younger versions of these characters. It's just, every issue he writes, there's some sort of interaction between two characters that's like, oh wow, I didn't think of what would happen when these two characters ran into each other, but that's interesting. And I think that's one of the things that Bendis has always been really good at, not just the towering action sequences, but also that personal interaction between two characters that could be talking about, you know, ordering a pizza that day.
I love that kind of connection in my comics, and that's, as a DC fan, what I'm kind of missing right now with the New 52.
Okay. The
fact that they started so much over, right, and rebooted so much stuff that you're still learning heroes' past, even though you knew their past when it was one universe, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, I knew what Clark and Lois' relationship for forever, and now when you reboot it and change certain things, you wait for those moments to come around, but they have to be explained to you.
Well, I'll tell you this. There is one. There are a couple things in DC that I'm reading, and one of them is Batgirl.
Yeah,
and I've been
really
I thought it's been really good. Gail Simone is awesome,
amazing.
And I've really enjoyed. They didn't reboot her as much as they put her in a different direction with her coming out of the wheelchair and being completely mobile and becoming Batgirl again. I've really enjoyed the last couple of issues with her interaction with her dad, Commissioner Gordon, and the story of her brother being a serial killer, and like all that to me is awesome. And I really enjoy the art as well. Like the first couple of issues, I want to say the artist's name was Adrian Syaf or Syap, but I mean the art throughout the series, the first 2 years of the book have been great. So I mean, that's an example of something that I'm really enjoying on the DC side as well. So
well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Look at that, Marvel, DC. We come together. We break bread. We talk about what we like. But what do you like? Let us know in the comments. Then make sure you share this video with your Marvel and/or DC fan. And also, I'm a huge Image fan. We didn't even touch on that. I love Invincible.
Invincible's great. Robert Kirkman's outstanding.
Yeah, of course.
If you don't know that,
thousands of millions of dollars in his pockets. Everybody knows.
So I don't get it. I don't get as much Image just because.
You got no connections.
Yeah, and you know, it depends on the creators, because there's no characters that have really, you know, they came around when I was already, you know, almost 30 years old.
All right.
So yeah, there's no connection to those characters. It just depends on the creators.
I'm sure you, ladies and gentlemen, know people in Image that we should be following, comics we should be reading. Let us know in those comments so Christopher Daniels can continue to read comics as he kicks people's ass in TNA. Chris, thanks so much.
Thank you, man.
Always
Thanks for
a pleasure. Everybody, for everything about comics, keep it on IGN.